colitis when I was 13, which is a inflammatory bowel disease. And obviously with that, there's so many links with inflammation. And then I was going through a whole gut health journey, but I think because I was so young, it kind of just got a little bit ignored because it was like, okay, you just have this thing. I didn't really know anything about it. And then as I've got older and learning so much about the links with inflammation and the root causes, it's just been so eye-opening with the things that you can actually add in and you can do. And I've really been able to manage a lot of my symptoms, but there are so many connections with endo. So as well as ulcerative colitis, I actually do have endometriosis, and I got diagnosed with that about 3 years ago. And that's still quite a recent diagnosis, so I'm so excited to pick Sophie's brains about it all and how the link with nutrition can just support those. But I know that you've had it for a bit longer than that, haven't you? And yours is a whole mission with finding it out, so I'd love to know more about that journey for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what you just mentioned as well about having something that you're not quite understanding and trying to get support out there is something probably so many of us have struggled with, especially when it's to do with your tummy. Because I just found like every doctor I went to see was just like, oh, you're a woman, it's just period pain. Like that's all that this can be, especially if you do have flare-ups around your cycle, which is so common because we know that with hormones going up and down, you can suffer with things like bloating or water retention. And then there's just the narrative that people believe, or used to believe anyway, that periods were supposed to be painful. So it can make that kind of diagnosis process really, really tricky. But yeah, similar to you, like I was really struggling with these like random pains in my stomach, bloating all the time. Knew that certain meals would flare me up, but I didn't really understand why. And it was a really confusing time, so I was misdiagnosed for so long. But in the grand scheme of endometriosis, I was actually really lucky. So I got all of my symptoms when I was about 17. So I feel like really jammy because most people get their cycles or like their periods start when they're maybe 12 or 13. So I went scot-free, symptom-free until I got my period. And it was just like absolute death. And I just thought, how have my friends been going along, just like going to school or going to university, going to their jobs with this horrific period pain? Because again, I thought it was normal. And then fast forward 5 years later, finally getting my endometriosis diagnosis. And then was kind of just told, great news, we've got like a label for what you're going through. The bad news is there's literally nothing that you can do, and this is it. Like whatever symptom relief you've had from the surgery, that's it. And because it was a doctor and a surgeon telling me that, I was just like, well, shit, like this is the best of the best that I'm gonna get then. And I'm so grateful for things like the internet. Like I know it can be a really shit place sometimes and there's tons of misinformation out there, but it's also what gave me access to people outside of like my immediate postcode to be like, oh, some people are experimenting with different ways of eating and things. And I definitely went down so many rabbit holes that I wish no one goes down. But it was kind of my way of understanding that, okay, there are other people going through something similar. You might have seen this as well. When you start sharing your experience or Googling it and realising, oh, okay, maybe there's a way to help. And that's why I'm so happy with doing this kind of like talk, or rather that workshop. Like if you have any questions, just ask. And why we're going to do movement, because again, exercise used to be something that I like dreamt of being able to do, but I was in so much pain doing it and I didn't understand why. And then found like methods of moving like you do with Aloha Girls, of like Pilates that's actually beneficial for inflammation, which again, no one was talking about. And I don't actually think that many people are talking about it now. It's still like how to move your body, how many calories you can burn, and how quickly can you do it. Whereas actually like speaking to you and everything that you talk about, nervous system support, it's stuff that helps everyone, whether you've got a condition or not. But also if you do have something like ulcerative colitis or endometriosis, it can be so helpful. So yeah, it's definitely been a bit of a journey, but I also wouldn't wish it away weirdly either, because I really enjoy what I do now, and I don't think I would have found, you know, like wellness and healthy eating had I not gone through that. So I always say if I didn't have endo, I'd have type 2 diabetes, because I literally lived off custard creams. Like it was my favourite thing to
They are my favourite biscuit.
They're phenomenal. Have you tried the ones in M&S that now?
Chocolate. Yum.
It's like crack, honestly. So I always say, do you know what, if I hadn't been diagnosed with endo, I would just be the other way anyway. So yeah, I'm really grateful that I found it, and it means like having mornings like this, which I think is so lush.
Yeah, and that's such a big part of why I went into nutrition as well, because I think when you do have a personal journey or experience, you can resonate with the people you're talking to. But I also wanted to mention, so you said you got wrongly misdiagnosed. Was that a lot with PCOS or was it with IBS? What did they tell you? Because mine actually did take about 7 years to get, and they just said to me, you've got PCOS, it's just normal, all of the things that you were just mentioning. And I think you always know your body so well and you know it best. And I was just thinking, this can't be that. And it's not that it could just be that, because that in itself is such a hard condition to manage, and it comes with so many of the similar symptoms and issues. But I just knew that there was, well, actually your page really helped me to kind of back myself as well and identify with those types of things and know, okay, this is actually going on. Like I can resonate with about 10 of these symptoms, and then they're like, oh, this is not normal, this is endo, and you're like, okay, well, I tick all of those boxes. So did you get diagnosed with that first? Or?
Yeah, so I always say my biggest problem was that I had an ultrasound which showed that I had 2 cysts on my ovaries. So like nothing crazy alarming in terms of like, with PCOS you don't actually have to have cysts on your ovaries. It's one of the things that can come, but it's not like a guaranteed. But if you're looking at ovaries and cysts and wanting to diagnose PCOS, really it should have been literally, like they call it pearls around your ovaries, like tons of cysts, and I didn't have that. So the PCOS conversation came up a lot because they were like, oh, you do have 2 cysts on your ovaries, but I wasn't ticking the other boxes. But depending on the doctor that I went to, the narrative would change. Like one would be like, oh, it's completely normal, and the other people would be like, oh no, you've got cysts, that's why you're having pain. So for me, what delayed my diagnosis a lot was because I had these 2 cysts. So the bloating, the inflammation, the struggling with periods, they kept being like, it's just to do with your cysts, that's the problem. And also the whole fact that I think this is one of the worst parts of the diagnosis process for me, was because I was so late getting my period. It was very like, oh, you've just not like got used to them, because I was saying like my friends aren't keeling over, passing out, or throwing up, and they were like, oh yeah, but your friends have periods for 4 or 5 years, so they're just used to it, your body will get used to it. And I just remember thinking like, oh okay, yeah, fine, because I was 17, 18, like I didn't know better. Whereas now, like the thought process of a doctor telling you that you throwing up is something you just need to get used to is like fucking insane. And it's why I talk about it all the time, like advocate for yourself all the time. Like I made a post about it yesterday about my skin, and sometimes you just hear doctors say things and you're like, that's not normal, like I wouldn't tell my friend, get used to being sick. And again, the bloating that I was having, because it was like so consistent and it wasn't only around my cycle, which again, there's this misconception that endometriosis is a period disease. It's not, it's a full body thing, and it isn't just around your cycle, so that also delayed it. And I do like give grace to the doctors that misdiagnosed along the way, because it is quite a confusing condition, and PCOS, for example, can also be a confusing one. There are so many different conditions that can have similar symptoms: fatigue, brain fog, acne, bloating, delayed periods, or no periods, for example. So it is hard to piece it together. However, I stand by, there is a bit of a tick list with endo, which is if you are having sharp, twisting, excruciating pain, if you are consistently vomiting, your periods are getting heavier, this should have been an alarm bell sooner. And I hope that there's more awareness out there now that is helping doctors be a bit more aware of it. But yeah, PCOS was definitely part of it. IBS was another one. My mum has celiac disease, so that was another thing we explored. And also I was on the train of like the pill at the time. I didn't really know anything about hormones. So it was like a blessing and a curse. You try it, it would stop your periods for a bit, and then it would stop working, and then you have to try a new pill. And they always say, I'll come back in 3 to 6 months. So coming back 3 to 6 months is like 4 goes a year, and before you know it, 5 years down the line with no answers. So it was a really tricky one, and I thought being diagnosed would kind of fix everything, and it sort of didn't, because it's just a chronic thing that you live with, which is why lifestyle medicine and like pillars of inflammation, I always say food, gut, detoxification, sleep, stress and movement are like the 6 pillars that everyone should be focusing on, not just if you have endometriosis or ulcerative colitis, for example, but they can be especially beneficial if you do struggle with them.
Yeah, and that's where it's so interesting, because obviously the food is such a big part and nutrition is such a big part, but it isn't the only part. And I think when people get so focused on that, and with disordered eating, I work a lot with something that's so important to touch on as we're doing this talk, because you aren't fully in control of your health. And I actually found that quite difficult as well, because I'm a nutritionist and everyone thinks, oh well, you must be super healthy, and of course I take care of myself and I do all of these things, but it is almost, you feel a bit hypocritical, because I'm like, well, I have like 3 different conditions that I can't change, but that's because about 60% of your health is genetics, and there's so many other things that are going on. But food is something that we can definitely focus on. One of those pillars, it's so important, and having an anti-inflammatory diet that is so high in all of those lovely things like the omega-3s, the whole grains, the nuts, the seeds, the fibre. I obviously went on a whole fibre gut health journey from such a young age, and it's something I'm so passionate about, because it literally contributes to everything, doesn't it? And hormones especially, people don't understand how important fibre is and how important gut health is, and you probably know so much about this already, but your immune system is literally directly next to your digestive system, and your gut lining is so thin that it's about 1 cell difference. So your gut bugs can actually train your immune system to keep you well. So when we're really nurturing our gut health, it's going to nurture our immune system, and of course that links to inflammation, because inflammation, when it's a small amount and it's actually happening in a normal way, it's completely essential. And if you get a cut, for example, it's going to scab over, or if you got a flu or a fever, your body's going to get really hot to fight it off and fight off that infection. But the problem is when that low-grade inflammation is happening, and that can be from conditions like IBD, endo, PCOS, but it can also be stress, constantly having work stress, nervous system dysregulation, sedentary lifestyle, a diet that is heavily focused on those inflammatory foods, processed foods. So what we can always think about, that Alice and I love to talk about at all of our events and with my nutrition, is eating to glow, because that's a really anti-inflammatory way of eating, with the greens, the lean proteins, the oils, the omegas, and the whole grains. And I just love that acronym, because whenever you're building a bowl, you're building a plate, you're thinking about your day in the life of eating, you can just have those at the forefront of your mind, and eating the colour of the rainbow, making sure you're getting at least 30 grams of fibre every single day. And you've got all of your hacks as well, that I'd love to talk about that with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you said there about not being able to control your health fully is something important to recognise, because it's definitely something I've been through, where like you find a system that works for you, and then one day you have a flare up and you're like, wait, what? I thought I had the perfect system that would never fail me. And sometimes you just have to go, do you know what, shit happens, like life happens. Like I recently had, like my skin was getting so much better, I worked on it so hard, and then I had this absolute monstrous flare up. It was so painful. But my mum's also been like critically ill for months, and so obviously that's going to have a toll. And so even though I get up and I set my circadian rhythm by going out for my morning walk, I do my lymphatic drainage, stress, as you just mentioned, can wipe it out. And it's why I wish someone would have told me sooner that food is such a huge part of the puzzle. Absolutely, because we eat day in, day out, every single day, and so what you put in is of course going to affect what comes out. But also, if you don't set the foundations, which is like the stress, the gut health, making sure you're also eating the right kind of foods, it's not going to work together. So it's nice to kind of be like, right, I've got these systems, I've got these hacks that work for me, but if I do have a flare up, that's okay, I've not failed, it's just my body's responding to something. And you don't need to swing back to the extreme to get it to come back. If you just stick to the routine that you know that works for you, eventually you'll come back down. And you see people going on holidays and their routine naturally changes, their weight changes, their water weight changes, and then they come home and they're like, oh, I need to starve myself now because I put weight on. And it's like, no, if you just go back to your normal routine, you'll go back to your normal self. So I wish someone had told me that sooner, but my little hack is like, I call it my 30-day reset, but it's actually just how I live my life. There's 6 things that I just do every day. And the first one is my morning walk. Like I'm obsessed with my morning walk, even if it's just 10 minutes. Not only is it just like a great way to get some fresh air, but also exposing yourself to natural sunlight can help set that circadian rhythm. So you know when you wake up and you're like groggy, roll out of bed and then you roll up like onto your laptop and you've literally not seen the sun, and then when you do go outside you feel like you've been sat in the cinema and you're like, oh my god, there's like another world out here. That we have a hormone melatonin that when you're exposed to natural sunlight in the morning starts to go, okay, it's time for me to go away, so you feel awake. So if you actually just go outside and have some morning sunlight in your eyes, even if you just sat outside, is such a big help. But I also like to tag team it with a walk, because that walk also helps stimulate digestion. Like for years I was chronically constipated from like being a kid, and that alone, going out for a morning walk, has helped so much. Have like that morning poo, which again sounds like gross, I know, but I'm not supposed to talk about it, but it is such a huge part of like making yourself feel good and keeping your digestion going, which you mentioned about hormones and how important it is. Like I had no idea till I did my women's health practitioner course that your hormones can actually be recycled or reused. So if you're not having your morning poo like I used to be, I was constipated, I was lucky to go once a week and it was like awful. Your estrogen can literally be recirculated and start to be reused. So if you do have conditions that are massively impacted by estrogen, like endometriosis, being constipated is like your worst enemy. And I think for me, it's why I wrote my book of like explaining the why, because I could have just written at midnight, just do this every day. But I purposely put the why behind it, so I feel like if you understand why having a morning poo is so important, so many more people wake up and be like, do you know what, I've got 10 minutes to go for a walk. So I wake up, do my morning walk, ideally outside. Then I do my lymphatic drainage, it's like 2 minutes. And if you're getting your morning walk in, like that can count as lymphatic drainage, it's part of movement. But you know when you wake up, like who wakes up feeling like a bit puffy and they look in the mirror and they're like, I don't really know who I'm looking at right now. Exactly. It's actually a really normal thing. Like your lymphatic system, I always think if you just imagined your veins right now, they're all over your body, right? And you know that blood gets pumped around because you've got your heart. I always think, just imagine copy and paste that as your lymphatic system, but you don't have a heart to pump anything. So all of that fluid just gets stagnant when you're sat for too long. Like for me, if I'm sat even for like 2 hours, my ankles are like out here, and it's just your lymphatic system needing some movement. So whether going out for a morning walk is your kind of pumping that system, or whether you want to do something like the 6-step, like I love my 6 steps, it takes 2 minutes, or just jumping up and down the spot, it's so easy. And if I haven't got time, whenever I'm doing my morning tea or coffee and I've got the kettle on, I just literally bounce up and down, and that's my lymphatic drainage. So my morning walk, my lymphatic drainage, whole food, which I'll let you cover because I know that you're the food expert, but I always just go, I don't like overcomplicate it, I just go whole food, so is it one ingredient, meat, fish, fruit, veg, nuts, seeds, grains, legumes, and make sure that I've got plenty of it throughout the day. Because I used to think, oh, should we be fasting, should we not? But my body definitely responds better when I have breakfast first thing in the morning, lunch, dinner, and I have little snacks in between that are also balanced and are also focused on whole food. So I try and avoid like the grab-and-go bars because they tend to be full of shit unless you're making them yourself and you've got a ton of amazing recipes. I know on your app as well. So if anyone wants to get some good recipes, that's a good place. So we've got whole food, and then the last 3 are sleep, stress, and movement. So stress for me is something I still really struggle to manage. I feel like I'm someone who gets very excited very easily, and I love my job, which also means I travel loads and I take way too much on. But literally taking 10 minutes in my day doing something called NSDR, non-sleep deep relaxation. And I really like, I know he's a bit of a controversial guy, Andrew Huberman, but he's got a great free meditation on YouTube. It's 10 minutes. And it just helps move you from that like fight or flight where you feel like your life's on fire and you're chasing your tail and you think nothing's going to help you, and then you have this 10-minute relaxation and you're like, oh, everything's going to be fine. Like I'm sure you'll feel it at the end of the class today. You just give your brain that like little massage. And then we've got sleep, which is such an important one. Like so many people are struggling with inflammation and they are cutting huge things out of their diet, or they're drastically changing their lifestyle, when actually if they had a really good night's sleep, that will be such a big help. And it's not just about literally giving yourself rest, but it's also like one of the body's biggest detoxification systems. Like it's incredible, sleep can do so much for you, and detox is the final one as well. So movement really helps with that, food you eat really helps with that, sleep really helps with that. So there's 6 things that sound like a lot of things, but to sum it up, I go for a morning walk, jump up and down for like a minute or 2 to get my lymphatic system going. I eat pretty healthy food. I try and get some sort of movement most days, whether that is an at-home Pilates class or whether it is a gym workout, or maybe it's just an extra long walk. I do some form of detoxification, so again, normally it's my lymphatic drainage that I try, and then I make sure I sleep well, and like those are my biggest things in my mindful moment, and I try and do as many of those every single day, and the more of those things I do, the better I feel. And often if I'm feeling rubbish, whether that is like physically inflamed or mentally most of it's free, like you don't need to pay for any of that. If I need supplements, I will, but most of the time it's food.
Yeah, no, I love hearing that, and simplifying it is so important because so many people try and just add in everything apart from the things they actually need to be doing, and 80 to 90% of it is actually the foundations that you were talking about, and it's so good to hear that they're all accessible things that you can be just doing every day. And even just touching into the breath work, Alice and I love breath work, and we put a lot of ones on our app, which actually there is a 7-day free trial, so we didn't really mention our app, but it's basically Alice's incredible Pilates classes, it's all of the recipes and help with the meal plans, which obviously Sophie has her incredible book as well, but then we've also got some breath work that can just be things that you're touching in to get your out of fight and flight basically, because so much of our day it's like an email will come in or something happens and you're just triggered, and you just need to get out of that. But what you were saying about stress and your mum unfortunately being unwell at the beginning of the year, something that I've always found as a pattern with my colitis was that I would have a stressful period and then a month later I know I'll get a flare up. So I actually am in a flare up currently, but basically at the beginning of the year my mum was really unwell as well, and that triggered this flare up kind of happening in March. So it was always the way that when I would do exams at school or at university, I knew, okay, I'm gonna get a flare up. And it was almost like, it sounds really sad, but actually it helped me to prepare for that, because I think it's so frustrating when you think I need to do more and I need to add in loads more things, but actually it's just taking a step back and being really kind to yourself, which as women, we don't have much medical research out there for us. Like about 2% of all neuroscience studies are done on the female brain, which is absolutely mental. It's so shocking, and it's us having to be those advocates for ourselves, and that's where the internet and finding pages like yours and having these communities is so great, because we can touch into it more. One thing you mentioned about the bloating, what would you say, apart from the lymphatic and the things you just mentioned, are there any kind of quick tips or things that you could recommend for people around that? Because I think bloating, especially with hormones, it is understanding sometimes it's normal and we eat food, it's got to go somewhere, it's going to go into our tummies, and that's a really normal part of our day. But when it is that persistent, really painful bloating, something I get a lot still, but it will just come and it will go, and I think 80% of my life I'm bloated, so I can't really necessarily tell you that I found the cure, but have you found any things that have helped you?
Yeah, I wish it was like a magic bullet of like, this is the one thing that helps me, but it is those 6 things that I come back to, and but the best thing is they work really quickly as well. Like that morning sunlight, if I'm in a blow, I'm not going out for a long walk, but I will try and sit outside for literally 5 minutes with a herbal tea. I love dandelion tea when I'm really struggling, because I love peppermint tea as well, but if my stomach is really in that, like, I'm gonna fire off anything you put in me right now, even peppermint can feel really strong, or like lemon and ginger can feel really strong. So dandelion is something that I found really helps my water retention and my bloating, and just being outside. The other thing is my movement completely changes this. So I'll go into things like yin yoga instead of going for a full-on workout, because I know that as much as I don't want to move my body in those moments, I know how supportive it can be, and I literally just try and stick to my basics. When it comes to food, I make sure that I'm cooking all of my vegetables and that they're really soft. Like mushy food really helps, because I always think like, what is going to help things move through my system? Drinking enough water and that mindful moment, because for me, and I know that there are people here that will get bloated, you get frustrated and like angry because you're trying to figure out what you've done wrong in your routine, but it could have been random, it could have been a family member being ill, and so it's about going, how can I put myself into rest and digest as much as possible, because that's literally what's going to help your stomach move. And mindful moments, that NSDR 10 minutes every single day. So I wouldn't say there's like a silver bullet, but I would say I just look at that 6-step reset and be like, how many of those things that I can do today And genuinely one of the biggest ones is probably taking some time to just chill and sleep, because it is so restorative. It's not being lazy. It's not just about, oh, I'm tired, I need to sleep. It's literally giving your body time to do nothing to fix on healing whatever that problem is. And that, I guarantee you, will give you so much more than whatever fitness class that you signed up for that day. So yeah, it is those fundamentals. I was chatting to a doctor actually last week. She's amazing, and she says, I always tell my clients, she's like, if I can prescribe you something right now that would guarantee to make you feel better, even if it was just a little bit, but it's going to make you feel better, it's got no side effects, it's going to cost you nothing, and you can start it today, would you do it? And they're all like, yeah, sign me up, what do I need to pick up, what tablet is it? And she's like, it's the 6-step pillar method, it's just lifestyle stuff. So it's one of those things where it can feel really disappointing and annoying because I know it's effort, but it's so worth it. And I scoffed at everyone that told me that lifestyle stuff works. I was like, I've had 4 surgeries by the way for endometriosis, I've had an extra 2 for egg freezing, like I've really been through the ringer, I've been on every single pill known to man, and nothing properly worked. So I was like, who is this person to tell me that food is going to make a difference? And then actually I was like, you know, I literally got nothing to lose at this point, I'll give it a go. And within 30 days my life changed, and that was 2.5 years ago, and I've never looked back. So I promise you it does make a difference. And if anyone here is like, she's talking absolute nonsense, please just give it a go and like prove me wrong, because honestly it genuinely is incredible. So yeah, no silver bullet, but
Yeah.
the foundations.
Yeah, and we've all seen that transformation and how it has been documented. I think that's what's so inspiring, because when people feel like they have tried everything, it's like, okay, just go back to the basics, what you've maybe tried before, but do it consistently. Because I think some people, not even just with endo and inflammation, just with anything, they will try and do it and they're like, oh well, it didn't work, but you've done it for like 2 days. You need to do it consistently over time and keep going back to it, and that's where it is about making it your lifestyle. And such a big part that I mentioned at the beginning with Alice and I starting the Aloha Girls, because we've known each other our whole lives, we've been so into this way of living, but also balance and realistic living. We found it really easy, I suppose, but we know that for so many people, they wouldn't know what to cook, or they wouldn't know how to move their bodies, or they hated exercise and they would do it because they had to punish themselves. Whereas we just absolutely loved it. Like, we'd go together, it was a whole part of our, like, we just loved doing it together. And obviously it's absolutely incredible that my best friend's a Pilates teacher, because what a win. And we've just made a business from it so we can hang out every day. But it is those things that you just can keep going back to and make them enjoyable. And if you're doing exercise that you absolutely hate, try something different, because there are things out there that walking your dog is movement, or not walking your dog, just walking. Walking is movement, and people think it has to be crazy workouts, HIIT workouts. I remember I used to be so inflamed when I was doing all those HIIT workouts and crazy things like that, and actually just doing things that is more mind-body connection is so much better. But also I was going to also ask you about sleep. Do you have like a specific unwind routine? Or because when we wake up, obviously if we've just had that amazing sleep, you don't expect just to be ready to go in a few minutes. So I think it's the same with going to sleep. You can't just expect to be asleep in a few minutes.
Yeah.
And I do find it quite hard to get to sleep sometimes, but one thing I found, magnesium is really good for calming the nervous system. That's a great supplement. Are there any other things that you do that you can share?
There are. So I have I love my route, and I have an alarm on at 7:30, and it just like gives me a little vibrate, and that's when we change the lights that we have control to anyway, change them to be like nighttime. Let me use my phone. So for example, I've set up this little automation thing that when I tap it 3 times it goes red. So that way, if everyone's got it, by the way, it's just free, do it in your settings. I can send a little tutorial after. But that is when I go, okay, I can't be on bright screens, because I mentioned earlier about the circadian rhythm, that seeing sunlight tells your melatonin, like your sleepy hormone, it's time to go away. So when you are like this, and we're all guilty, like one of my guilty pleasures, have like a TikTok with Dylan in bed, like there's nothing fun or sexy going on in bed, we're literally watching TikTok. But when you're literally there like this, scrolling with a bright screen, you're literally telling your hormone that is built to make you sleep, now is not the time for you to be there. So often we're going to bed going, oh my god, I've got ruminating thoughts, I can't sleep, I'm wide awake, why am I like this, was it the coffee that I had, was it this, was it that? But it might just be that you literally haven't given melatonin a chance to say hello. So I'm like, right, how do I get melatonin back? And I do that little red screen thing. I also look absolutely ludicrous, and I've got some posts on my Instagram where I have like the glasses and I look like a conspiracy theory man on TikTok, but my glasses are red so that if I am looking at TV and stuff, again, it's not impacting it as much. So that for me is like part of the wind down routine. As humans, we are super routine driven as well. So once you get into this routine of being like, I'm focusing on my sleep, I know that as soon as all my screens start going red, I'm like, okay, that's subconsciously a signal, nighttime is coming. That's like step one. Step two is I try and have no screens after that. So I do my like skincare, which I really enjoy doing. It's also part of like me trying to like appreciate, accept and improve my skin, because I've gone through such a love-hate relationship with my skin, and I'm trying to be kind to it, because our brain, like the more you listen to yourself, the more you believe yourself, right? So if you're like, I've got shit skin, I've got shit skin, you're just gonna start seeing shit skin all the time. So I've got this little routine where I like literally have affirmations around my mirror, and I'm like, I love my skin, it's healing itself, it's working really hard, blah 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 blah. So again, no screen time, but I'm also starting to be a little bit more present and in the moment, because when I'm doing my mental affirmations of like, I've got glass skin that looks beautiful, and I'm literally saying it out loud, and Dylan's like, oh, here we go again. And I'm like, it's amazing, it's shining, it's glowy, I'm doing all my serums. I'm not thinking about the emails that I forgot to reply to. I'm not thinking about the post that I said I was going to edit and post and haven't. I'm not thinking about the fact that I haven't replied to like any of my friends for like 2 weeks. Like, I'm not thinking about all these things that ruminate, because I'm just in the moment. So pulling yourself into that moment of being like, right, okay, I'm in the bathroom, I'm doing this routine. And then the thing for me that is like seals the deal for my nighttime is my journaling at night. Now, it is not this really fancy journal. I get a book which has nothing in it other than lines, and then I write what I can. So whether that is, I really enjoyed today, I'm so grateful I have the house I'm in, or Dylan, or Bella, and people. Or sometimes it's like an essay of things that I'm grateful for. Even if it was the worst day in the world, like even when Mum had her heart surgery, I was like, I'm so grateful that she had the hospital, I'm so grateful that we got her there in time. Because forcing yourself to be in that present moment and be joyful and grateful, again, helps your brain just like relax a little bit, because all day we're triggered. Whether it is emails, whether it's our boss, whether it's family, friends, TikTok and Instagram videos. As someone who creates videos, I know that every video is engineered to trigger some sort of emotion. So pulling yourself out of that kind of circle of rumination and into like a little mindful moment before going to bed can really help. But it was really interesting to me learning about circadian rhythm and being like, oh wow, if I could just do one of those things, like that little red light trick or getting the red light glasses, really helps melatonin come back, and you start to naturally feel tired. Because I think that's what most people struggle with. They just say, I'm not someone who sleeps, I don't get tired. And it's like, well, give your body the chance to produce the hormone that actually makes you feel tired, and screen time is a big one.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's so interesting, and I didn't know that about the red light. So maybe we can send that out to you all after. I could chat to you about this all day long, but we are going to get into some classes, which I think is a great way to end it, because we are just doing something that's so amazing and beneficial for our gut health, our hormone health, our inflammatory markers. So we're going to get into that, and then we've got a lovely bit of time at the end where we can have our salads, we can have a chat and answer any more personal questions. But thank you